on Tánaiste Micheál Martin has said that Sophie Toscan du Plantier's murder case should have gone before a jury and noted that we failed in our duty to find and convict a bloody murderer. He went further than that. He said Ian Bailey should have gone on trial in Ireland for the murder of Sophie Toscan du Plantier. And for more on this, we're joined by Mick Clifford, special correspondent for the Irish Examiner. Good morning to you, Mick.
Hi, Ciara.
Firstly, what did you make of the Tánaiste's comments last night?
I have to say I was fairly taken aback by them. They amounted, to be honest with you, to a barstool opinion, which is grand if you and me are sitting in a bar on stools and we're opining about how awful the world is in various ways and how we could fix it overnight if we were just given free rein. But of course, that is not Mr. Martin's office. He's the Tánaiste, he's the most senior politician in the country, and he was effectively criticising in a very severe way the justice system in this country. Now, there is much that can be criticised about the justice system, but if you examine in detail what happened here, and if you look in particular at the repeated attempts there were by various officials to ensure there was a prosecution against Mr. Bailey, you have to come to the conclusion that Micheál Martin's comments are totally off the Richter scale in that respect.
Yeah, I thought they were quite out of character for the Tánaiste. He is usually quite measured, actually, as politicians go, and I was somewhat surprised. Does he have... I would agree with you, first of all, that he was very critical of the judiciary, and I was surprised, even just with regard to the separation of powers. Usually, the legislative avoids being critical in this way of the judiciary, so I was surprised on that front. But did he have any sort of a point that, you know, France is one of our EU allies, closely allied to this country, and they were looking for Ian Bailey to attend this trial in France? Should we have facilitated that? Was there more we could have or should have done?
Yeah, I'll come to that in a minute because I attended that trial. But in terms of Mr. Martin, one thing he did say, I think, that would resonate, and definitely he has a point on a separate issue last night. He suggested how slow the system moved, and he cited the fact that, for example, we saw in the UK recently that people who are involved in far-right rioting and violence were quickly brought to justice. He's absolutely right that should have been done much quicker here. Now, that's a separate issue. In terms of extraditing Mr. Bailey, I attended that trial, Ciara, and I have to say, with the greatest respect, and I have huge time for France and French people in general, but that trial was a show trial. It was basically a hearing to confirm Ian Bailey's guilt, and I've written about this numerous times about the quality of some of the evidence wouldn't make it past the door in an Irish court, and it looked to be very politically motivated. And if, following that conviction, the courts had extradited Bailey, in my opinion, they would have done a huge disservice to any basic notions of natural justice. Ian Bailey is deceased now, and it's not nice to speak of the dead, but he was a highly unattractive character. We'd heard in one court years ago his history of domestic violence, which was shocking. He was a bore. He was a complete bore, and he showed narcissistic traits. And by contrast, the family of Ms du Plantier have carried what is a horrific burden with pure dignity. I mean, they've really been, they are extremely, you couldn't see anything wrong with them.
They do appear to feel quite let down, though, by the Irish criminal justice system.
They do. But that of itself, the point I'm making is we have laws not for the people we like. We have laws for everybody, and just because...
And justice is blind, and I accept that.
And it's what it should be.
I hear what you're saying, Mick. You're saying that was a show trial, but we know that in retrospect, the trial having played out. Should Ian Bailey have been compelled to attend that trial in advance of that trial and have sat there, do you think, in the dock? I don't mean being extradited after he was convicted. I mean, should the man have been in Paris for the trial?
I don't believe so, because the whole method by which he was brought to trial, and as far as I remember, the French approach was to go ahead with the trial. There had been previous attempts to extradite him to France. Mm-hmm. I mean, would we extradite a citizen to another country on that basis? I'd be very slow to do so. What it had about it, and Mr. Martin,
I suppose the interesting thing, though, is that he's a British citizen. He was a British citizen, Ian Bailey, a resident in Ireland. So I still kind of wonder, considering our close relationship with France, perhaps why we didn't.
Well, Micheál Martin last night referred to the fact, he said that our system blocked alternative routes when others were not willing to accept our failures. Now, that's the safest thing to say. That's basically saying we couldn't get him. The French set out, they set up a system to get him, and we didn't let them get him. I mean, let me put it another way to you. The standards Micheál Martin was referencing last night, I covered tribunals for 10 years. If those standards were applied there, you would have had dozens of politicians and senior business people in prison for perjury. So, we either have a law for everybody, including those we can relate to and like, or we don't have a law at all.
Even-handed. Look, they were extraordinary comments. I think a lot of eyebrows shot up yesterday evening in surprise, if not more than that. And thank you for joining us on that this morning. That is Mick Clifford, special correspondent for the Irish Examiner and also author of the book, which is selling like hotcakes, to be perfectly honest, Who Killed Una Linsky? And well worth a read. Thank you for that indeed, Mick. Let us know this morning what you think. They were surprising comments, weren't they, by Micheál Martin?
Very out of character.
Very out of character. Because the man is a measured man by any
extraordinarily loose from the Tánaiste. I was really surprised.
Let us know what you think out there this morning. I suppose a lot of people do feel that we failed Sophie Toscan du Plantier.
We did, and the investigation was flawed.
A lot of people believe, rightly or wrongly, we can't know one way or the other, but rightly or wrongly, that Ian Bailey got away with murder, that people believe that.
Perhaps, but the DPP looked at this and said there wasn't enough evidence to go to trial, and we have to respect that process.
Let us know what you think out there this morning.